John, tonight's presentations.
Thank you. And tonight we have Bob Allphin, K4UEE, renowned DXer, is going to talk about Bouvet Island. How renowned is Bob? Well, I've got a 20-minute presentation on that to introduce him, but I've condensed it down to a couple. Here he is on the cover of the January 2005 CQ magazine and holding a map of Peter I, which was one of his rare DXpeditions. He's been on the cover of quite a few magazines and written up quite often. But I'll let him tell you about Bouvet and a few other things related to DXpeditions, but I'll tell you, I'm going to spend a couple minutes to tell you about Bob. He was raised as the son of a U.S. Air Force officer, which enabled him to travel widely, and wildly too, possibly. I'm supposed to keep that to myself. And he finished high school in Okinawa, attended Auburn University, and was Cadet Corps Commander of the U.S. Air Force ROTC program, received a regular commission along with a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial Management. A distinguished graduate at both the Air Force Navigator School, Electronic Warfare School, he became an instructor in electronic warfare during the Vietnam conflict. And after receiving an honorable discharge at the rank of captain, thank you for your service, sir, he entered the securities industry and was a stockbroker and retired 28 years later as a senior VP and division sales manager for Manulife Financial, now John Hancock. But what about ham radio and Bob? Well, here's just a few things. Believe me, condense this down. But he was licensed at the age of 14. And we'll jump ahead real quick. He's contacted and confirmed all of the DXCC entities.
Oh, wow.
And then he turned 15. No. And besides working DXCC entities, Bob has also been giving hams the opportunity to work them as well. And that's what we're going to see a bit and learn about tonight. Bob has participated in, led, or co-led DXpeditions to 11 of the DXCC top 10 most wanted. As you know, there's 340 current entities. And once you get over that 300 level, it's really hard to work these top 10, and Bob's groups have made them available and activated them. The list is Baker Howland, which was number 8, Heard Island, number 4, Bhutan, number 3, South Sandwich, number 6, South Georgia, number 10, Peter I, number 4 at the time, Lakshadweep, number 2, Desiceo, number 6, Amsterdam, St. Paul, number 4, Saba, St. Eustatius, which was an all-time new one. Well, probably, I guess it was been, as you can say, it was most wanted because it was brand new. And Navassa Island, which was number 1 at the time, I guess, pretty impressive. As you will see from this presentation, and I think Jim Stafford referred to this, these islands just mentioned are not of the Jamaican or Cayman variety. And if you look at that, he's pointing to no. I didn't nod. If you look at that slide, he's pointing to Peter I, just off the coast of Antarctica. So it's a resort island there. But as you know, the conditions of a lot of these islands are very challenging. Bob has participated in 10 major DXpeditions that have made over 1.25 million QSOs. He has 11 DXpedition of the Year plaques hanging on his wall. And he also, and I don't know if these are the most current numbers, DXCF, which is countries on foot. Bob has been to 127 different countries. 127 different countries. And he's operated from 76 of those. So it's got me beat by about 125. But that's an interesting stat. He's an active contester, participated in 38 contest DXpeditions, and he set 5 single-band world records. And I don't know if any of you recently saw on the QSTs and CQs about the WRTC World Radio Team Championships. He participated in that in 1996 and 2000. He's a member of the CQ DX Hall of Fame, Board of Directors of Indexa, International DX Association, past president of the Southeast DX Club here in Atlanta, where I met him 30 years ago. And as this will be our last program of 2018, as previously mentioned, we're excited to have Bob here tonight for our final program of the year, and I think it'll be a highlight and put an exclamation point on our year. If you remember from the club calendar, Bob was originally scheduled for our August meeting, but he had a conflict arise when he was invited to be a participant in the recent August DXpedition to the Austral Islands. He was very apologetic when he informed me he had to back out, and I, of course, was disappointed, but I proposed that we would reschedule him for October, which he was more than agreeable to do. And I also mentioned on that call before he left that I needed Australs on 40 and 80 meter bands and lacked a digital contact. So here's my card. I now have Australs on FT8, 40 and 80 meter CW, so things kind of worked out. And Bob may mention a few things about his experience as Austral at the end too. So please, a warm welcome to our distinguished guest, Bob Allphin.
I want to know where you got a picture of that world map with those pins in it.
Who's your friend? And your enemy?
That's hidden in a corner of my basement. I think maybe somebody colluded. Which one do I push?
The one to the right.
Okay, very good.
Just stay close to the screen.
Yeah, that's right. Pleasure to be here. I've been here before, and I must say that it's an impressive club. Some of your members I've known for a long, long time by virtue of my connection with the Southeastern DX Club, which I would refer to as a vertical club. We basically have one interest, and that's DXing. This is probably one of the best examples of what I call a horizontal club. Because when I see all of the activities and all of the things that you all are involved in this great hobby, I find it very, very impressive. So I congratulate you on that. As John mentioned, we've got a couple of options here. I can go really, really fast and talk about the failure as opposed to dragging that out. Okay, I'll drag it out. Or at the end, what I'd like to do is take a few minutes to talk about this trip to the Austral. The bottom line is, the Island DXpedition is a wonderful example of the most difficult possible type of DXpeditions. Taking years to plan, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, and taking a team of 20 halfway around the world for 6 or 7 weeks. It's a full-time job for about 3 years. On the other hand, being invited to join a group of friends in the Austral Islands and being told, Bob, there's another way to do these things, you know, where you just get on a plane and you fly for a while and you land and then you check into a hotel and you put up some antennas and then you make contacts. And by the way, don't worry about planning it because we'll take care of that. And we also have 3 meals a day and shower. There's a grocery store right next door. So that's one end of the spectrum. Bouvet is the other end. So I'm going to try to get this all in because maybe the Austral experience might be something that you all might be interested in. I'm confident that the Bouvet experience is not. We were so close. That's the island, photograph taken from our ship. At one point we were probably no more than a half a mile away, and we spent about 3 days there. Here's what I'd like to do tonight. I'm going to show you some extraordinary photos. I'm going to talk about how we selected the ship, how we vetted it, what have we learned, are we going to do another attempt. I'm going to talk about the fact that your club will have an option along with all the other contributors worldwide, to get some of your money back, because we do have a balance left. And then I want to make some personal observations. John has been kind enough to go over some of the past successes. Maybe we were due for a failure. I will point out that VK0IR, I and my good friend Wes were on, took 2 attempts, also in the Antarctic region, and then the 3Y0X, the Peter 1 expedition, also took 2 attempts. In any case, you had an investment, you as a club, many of you individually contributed as well, but I think probably the major contributors are those that were on the team. Bottom line, just to be on the team, if invited, you had to write a check for $18,500. And then all the other expenses. We have people on the team that spent about $25,000 to go there, look at it, and come home. Oh, I forgot to mention the other part of the cost was 31 days in the Southern Ocean. That's the, what is it, Wes? The Roaring 40s and the Furious 50s?
You got it.
Yeah. Here we are in...
I've still got my buckets too, Bob.
Yes. We're in Punta Arenas, that was our jumping off point. 3 nights in the hotel and then 6 nights, because the boat was not quite finished and ready for us. 6 nights in a not so nice hotel. Kind of camp style, if you will. But we made the most of it. It wasn't that really bad. One of my favorite shots. This is actually kind of a bar and a restaurant and a hostel. And the guy who owned this place, what do you, is it a cover band when you're imitating a famous band?
Yeah.
Yes.
He is the lead singer singer in a cover band for Black Sabbath.
Oh.
So this kind of thing is all over the walls. Here's the obligatory picture in front of the big statue and the square. The idea is that if you touch the foot of that Indian, native Chilean, I guess, then you get to come back. I've touched it, I've been back 6 times. Wes has been there 4 or 5, I think. Crew and safety training, you know, this is serious business. It's dangerous, it's expensive, and we, particularly as leaders, we've got to make sure that we do everything we can to keep everybody safe. The guy on the left is Alejo. He works for the transportation company and was to be our guide. He's a well-known glaciologist and has led expeditions into Antarctica. He's been to the South Pole 16 times. So a good man to have. We reviewed medical procedures, CPR. We practiced launching Zodiacs. We climbed into Gumby suits. And we even did some practice firefighting. So finally, after a delay of 5 days, the vessel was certified and all the permits were received. I know I need to stay over here. I may not want to be in the picture, actually. So were there extra costs? Yes, we lost a week. The hotel was paid for by DAP. That's the company that we chartered the vessel from. And there it is. That's the vessel, about 220 feet. Built in the 70s, but recently renovated with a $2.5 million renovation. 2 helicopters, not 1. Another shot taken off of Cape Town. They talk about that at the end of the story. These are Eurocopters, BO-105s. And I think this is the same thing we used, same type of aircraft that we used for VK0IR, which is Rhode Island. There's just some more shots. 6 20-man life rafts, 3 on each side, so we had life rafts for 120 people. We only had 20 crew and 20 teams, so we were in pretty good shape in that regard. K9CT, one of our team members, another good shot of the helos. And here we are finally the next day leaving. I think this was the 19th of January. And the track that you see going off to the northeast is the track we're going into the Magellan Straits. Maybe you've heard about that. Named after a guy named Magellan. And basically you're going east or northeast, and that keeps you from going down into the Drake Passage and working your way east into the ocean in that direction. So it's pretty calm sailing for a while. Those seas look pretty friendly. A couple of the team members, PA5M, who works for the World Food Program. He is right now in Bangladesh. And the guy on the right is Erling, LA6VM. He's one of the co-leaders. He's from Norway. And here we are just doing some of the things that we needed to do. These are 8 amplifiers that were loaned to us, and we're putting them into boxes that can be more easily transported ashore. In other words, they're taken out of cardboard boxes and put in wooden boxes. The last thing you want is cardboard and that kind of thing on an island. Here's some shots in the interior. This was kind of the meeting room. You see there's a big screen TV at the end. I went to one of these places here, half-price DVDs, and spent $100 and got 23 DVDs. We watched them 14 times each. This was a meeting room that we, for various reasons, converted into a storage room. And this is where a lot of the activity was, because we turned this into the communication center. There's our one of our stations. We actually had 2 stations on the air, Maritime Mobile, a hallway with 5 cabins on each side of the hall. Each cabin would hold 4, but we only had 2 in some of them and 3 people in others, so it was quite roomy. We're on the bow here. There's our vertical antenna, and that's Greg Marco, also a local boy, W6 IZT, portable 4, and he has a home up in Blue Ridge now. And this is a fairly famous DXpeditioner, and his name is, his call sign is SM0. What's Hawk's? His name is Hawk, SM0. I want to say AGD, but no, SM5AQC. Sorry. Great guy, good English, lots of fun. Now, the reason that we're standing around here with these looks on our face like, what in the world is this? Is because we didn't know what it was. It's a flex radio, and we're using for the first time on a DXpedition a flex radio, an SDR. And the guy sitting there, K9CT, is an expert on these things. So he's conducting one of the many training sessions that we had on the radio. By the way, by the time we had used them for several days, we said, you know, this is really a nice radio, and I now own one. We made from the boat, Maritime Mobile, about 10,000 QSOs. You can see that if you look at the bottom right-hand side, the cumulative total, 10,345. If you look over to the left, 7,400 were made on CW. 2,700, or about 27% of the total QSOs, were made on FT8. That new mode, it's kind of sweeping the DX world. And then it's interesting to point out the favored bands. You'll see, looking at the total columns, not the cumulative column, but the total column, about 3,800 Qs on 40 meters, 4,200 on 20 meters. We were very encouraged by the fact that we made 1,600 QSOs on 15 meters, because, you know, sunspots are at a minimum now, and that encouraged us considerably. 3 meals a day. And good food. We're making good time. If you've heard of the Falkland Islands, we passed south of the Falklands. That was about 2.5 days out. And we had good weather, smooth sailing, low seas, and encountered something I'd never seen before. This is the Commerson dolphin. And reading from Wikipedia, has sharply delineated black and white patterning and is found around the tip of South America. Well, that's where we were, and it's really a beautiful animal. I'm a big sunset freak, so this is one of the few sunsets that we saw. So I made a big point of taking a picture of it. And this is a wandering albatross. These pictures don't do it justice because that wingspan's about 8 feet. And they literally will wander for months at a time without ever landing. Some of the guys on the trip, Arnie, N6HC, Arnie is a physician, Jim in 9TK, Al, JR40ZR, one of our Japanese operator, good guy, Pista from Hungary, HA5AO, there's PA5M for the Netherlands, Joost, not just, but Joost from Norway, Craig again, Keith from VE7 Land, Canada. This is Paul, W7IV. Paul is actually a ship captain and a guide in the inland passage to Alaska. That's how he makes his living. This is Jeff, NM1Y. Jeff, by the way, has been licensed about 4 years. And here he is on a DXpedition to the #2 most wanted DXCC entity. Jerry's always laughing. Good guy, great operator, and just a really, really good friend. And this is Hal, first time Hal had been with us. Hal lives in West Virginia. There's Alejo again. This is Glenn Johnson, he's a physician in Iowa, works for the Mayo Clinic. And this is my main partner, co-leader, Ralph K4UEE, also a retired physician. You'll know we had 3 physicians. Hawk, Bob, and Erling, the other Norwegian fella, and George, N4GRM. And he's a member of Southeastern DX Club, and maybe has spoken to you at one time or another. Not sure, he lives down in Fairburn. And there's Greg. So that's the team, with the exception of this fellow from Tajikistan, EY8MM, who not only has a wonderful station over there, and if anybody has a contact with Tajikistan, it's probably with Nodir. But he's also one heck of a photographer. In fact, most of these photographs that you're seeing here tonight are his product. Okay, now we passed the Falklands. The next group of islands, not a group actually, is a single island called South Georgia. Now don't confuse this with Valdosta. This is really south and has a little more snow than they have in Valdosta. It's a beautiful place, and this is the final resting place of Ernest Shackleton.
Oh.
And Wes and I have our photograph taken at that grave. Yeah. We were every day, most of the days, every day, we saw whales. Sometimes close, sometimes not so close. But the thing that changed dramatically was the weather and the waves and the sea conditions. Those weren't really big waves, it's just rough. And that has quite an impact on the vessel itself. Here's some more shots. Okay, the next group of islands that we passed, you see them right here. 5 or 6 islands running north to south. Those are the South Shetland Islands. I'm sorry, South Sandwich Islands. I should know that, I've been there. Operated from the southernmost. THULE, Thule, I believe it's pronounced. In any case, we passed north of those islands. We could see the northernmost islands, but no photographs available. Anyway, it's really started to get rough here. And we began to see icebergs. Yes?
Why did you guys leave from South America as opposed from South Africa?
The boat was based in Punta Arenas.
Okay.
Yeah. South Africa's a lot closer. You'll see that, a lot closer, and if there's another attempt, we would try to leave from there. If you've ever seen one of these things up close, you just open mouth. I mean, and of course, if you know anything about them, you know you're only seeing about 10% of them. The other 90% is beneath the water. Spectacular, aren't they? Okay, finally, 12 days in transit. January 31st, we arrive at Bouvet. And here's what we found. And the problem is, when you've got white snow, and you've got white clouds or white fog, there's no contrast. So getting a helicopter to fly, a helicopter pilot to fly a helicopter, is extremely difficult, and in fact, impossible, and rightly so. But this is Bouvet. I would say from the sea level there to the top of that glacier, probably 200 feet. Now that looks a little better, doesn't it? But could we fly? No. Now this is an interesting set of pictures here. In the left-hand side there you see something. I don't know whether it's fog or clouds, but it's a weather situation that is going to move across our landing area. And all of this took place in about 20 minutes. So, we held numerous meetings with the helicopter pilots.
That was exciting.
They look very interested in what we're telling them.
Serious, right?
It became obvious that the pilots were spooked. They're spooked by the weather. They were spooked by the infrequent and very short flying windows. They were spooked by the large amount of stuff we had to get ashore. It's included 14 radios and amps, antennas, masts, 8 6.5 kW gensets, 5 shelters, 23 men, food, water, gas, and mostly the high winds and the roll of the boat is what had them spooked.
Did none of that occur to them, like, before you guys even set out?
I'm sorry, say that again?
I mean, did they, like, start to think about all those factors, like, only once you guys got close to the island, or?
Yeah, I'll talk in a moment more about that, but this didn't surprise us. So we, in our contract, had contracted for 21 days at the island, with the idea that we would encounter these kinds of problems, but we would be able to move ashore over time, and we'd be able to operate maybe with most of the stations and most of the operators for a period of 12 to 14 days out of the 21. But we only got 3 days. And during that 3 days, we only had one weather window, and it was too late.
Was the boat going to stay while you were on the island? Or
Yes, boat, that's part of, yes, absolutely.
What's
The boat, the question was the boat going to stay? And the answer is, you betcha. So we modified the plan. We knew we had to do something. So we reduced the size and the scope of the planned operation. Again, we're trying to address the situation that we've encountered. We're going to reduce the amount of stuff going ashore. We adopted what we call MVC, Minimum Viable Configuration, which is what we did on Navassa. Because we got all of the equipment and all the people and all the food and all the water and all the radios and all the antennas and all the amplifiers and all the generators and all the people from Jamaica to Navassa in 6 helicopter flights. everything we needed, a minimum viable configuration. So the idea was to stage on as we got those openings in the weather, and then stage off. And then Ralph briefed the team. And this is where the shelters were stored, and the antennas and the towers. And we used some of our time to practice erecting the shelters. These probably look familiar to you, Wes. They're not the same ones we use, but they're similar. And half of us had done this before numerous times, but half of the team never had. So it made a lot of sense to make sure that everybody knew what to do and how to do it, and in what order, and be able to do it quickly.
How much does one of the shelters cost?
That one there is about $3,000. They normally run about 10, the 20 footers. I'm sorry, this is about 5,000. The larger ones that are 12 by 24, which is what we like to use, are about $10,000.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
While you were there, did you still operate Maritime Mobile there?
Yes. We did operate Maritime Mobile, but we weren't as enthusiastic about it as we were in route.
What call were you using for that?
3 Golf 9 Alpha stroke MM. And 3 Golf is a special call sign for Chile.
Oh.
It's a Chilean vessel. Meanwhile, outside,
Did you guys bring bathing suits?
so February 2nd, critical day. Clouds and fog moved in all day, winds picked up at sunset, gale force winds were predicted for the next 4 days. 2 anchors would not hold position. So the vessel encountered 80-mile-an-hour hurricane force winds and tried to, and did successfully, maneuver and keep it upright. But unfortunately, in those maneuvers, we blew a coupling on one of the engines. But I wanted to take a minute here and show you the weather forecast. This is for the next 24 hours. At noon, 1200, local time, 57-mile-an-hour gusts, 51, 60, 62. At 6 o'clock the next morning, 75-mile-an-hour gusts. So it didn't look good.
Where did you get the forecast?
I can get it on the web. And there is a weather station on the other side of the island which does not predict this very well. They were getting 20-mile-an-hour winds over there. We were getting 60-mile-an-hour winds on the other side. So we had an intense storm, no place to hide. Well, this is right before midnight on the 2nd. Trying to hold position, the coupling and the starboard engine failed. Passenger area filled with smoke. We donned our life vests, assembled on deck. We soon learned there was no fire, thank God, but the rubber coupling had overheated, failed, and caused the smoke. The next day we awoke to a beautiful day, but the concern was that if the second engine failed, we might run aground or hit an iceberg because we would be powerless. If the team was on the island and we lost that second engine, extraction would be impossible. So the captain did the only thing he could do, which is abort the mission. So we headed back to Chile. After 2 days, when the replacement coupling failed, then we turned around and said, you know, Cape Town's a lot closer. We're fighting the wind, we're fighting the waves going back to Chile. Let's put those to our favor. So we headed downwind with the current and headed north to avoid the ice. So this gives you an idea. So there's the, I wouldn't call that quite a U-turn, but it's definitely changing course to head back to, in this case, to South Africa. So how do we feel? This is kind of a gag picture, but it does kind of show some people even today that were on the team view this very differently. My view is that we did everything we could. Some people say, no, we could have done more. Some people still don't know what to think. I just know we were terribly, terribly disappointed. And we took some photographs. It was another 2 weeks to Cape Town. And then we had this meet us as we entered Cape Town Harbor. Should be, might hit, bump that. Should go, no, that's it. Well, there's a bugle on board, and they were blowing CQ. And these are a bunch of hams from the South African Radio League coming out to make us feel better and tell us that we had a big party ahead of us.
Somebody's trying to make you feel better.
Yep. So that's exactly, no matter where you are in the world, if you're a ham radio operator, you've got friends. So the next day at the Royal Cape Yacht Club, they threw let's just call it a wing ding. So one of our two flags donated it to the South African Radio League. I should put this picture in here because I just wanted you to see these faces. These are a little different than the faces you saw earlier in the show. They look rested. They're smiling. That's a big difference. And I think probably still being disappointed, they're thinking, it's time to go home. So let's talk a little bit. This makes me feel a little bit better about things because I think we did everything we could do. The people that we chose to charter the vessel from is the same people that took us to Peter 1. We did an on-site inspection in April of last year, signed a contract in July, and we included for the first time a fit-for-purpose questionnaire, 130 questions that had to be answered, usually in the affirmative, before we would send them the rest of the money. We did a Skype call with them during the Atlanta team member meeting here in September, and we stayed in touch with the principals of the organization about every 3 weeks and more often by email. We knew they were behind schedule, but all of the delays that were being encountered made sense. I mean, they were explainable, if you will, and they normally involve contractors or supplies or weather. For example, all the interior cabins were supposed to be prefab and come from China, and they were supposed to arrive in late September, and by mid-December they had not arrived. Things like that. But we did get all the inspections, certifications, and permits. And here's a quick look at the fit-for-purpose checklist. There was an option of yes, no, and okay, and everything looked good. Here's the safety certificate, current to 2022. I'm just going through this because some people think that, that we may have missed something somewhere along the line. I don't think we did. What did we learn? A dangerous place. There's never good weather, and if there is, it's not for long, and it's infrequent. The seas around Bouvet are wild, and there's no place to hide, no lee shore. I think if we're going to do this, we need to adopt a minimum viable configuration. rather than take everything we can possibly think we might need. And I think that the team has got to be without sissies. Not that we had any, I'm just pointing out we got to be careful. Interestingly, 87% of the team said yes or maybe do another try. The questions are, can we find another vessel? Can we find another helo? Can we get new team members that are able to step up and pay the big price and have the time? Can we find the money? Can we downsize and do this with an MVC, shorter, quicker? Can we get lucky, maybe 4 to 6 weeks earlier, might be a little different, don't know. Can we do it with a smaller footprint, 1 or 2 shelters, smaller team? But the big question for me personally is it worth the money, the time, the effort, and the risks? And there is a small team that's from Poland who says they're going to go. They're going to go on a 75-foot sailboat. They're going to climb the ice cliffs, and they're going to say they're going to operate. I think they're crazy, but I wish them luck. Because if they are successful, then we don't have to go. If we are to go, we can't do anything for another 18 months. Well, it would be 15 months now. So the people that have contributed, like your club, it's just too long to hold the money, it's too uncertain. So we're going to offer you a refund. The container has returned to the U.S. We're now getting all the equipment shipped back to the people who loaned it to us. We're in the process of paying all the bills. And then there'll be a methodology, we haven't quite developed it yet, where you can request a refund. We're going to give you several options. You can say, yes, I want a refund. And we're talking, I'm guessing, and I haven't made this public, but the number's somewhere between 40 and 50%. Or you can say, no, I'd like to direct my refund to the team to offset their considerable expenses. Or I'd like to give it to Northern California DX Foundation or International DX Foundation. And I think we'll probably have something in there that says we don't hear from you, then we'll give it to a DX Foundation. So there's the major sponsors: Flex Radio, DX Engineering, Northern Cal, and DEXA. 137 clubs, 3,700 individuals. Boy, am I looking forward to the next couple of months. Flex Radio Systems, DX Engineering. Personal observations, mentioned earlier, in response to a question, our contract called for 21 days at the island. That would allow 10 to 14 days on the air. We only got 3 due to the failure on the engine. If not for the abort, I think we would have gotten on the island and made some cues. I don't know how many, but I think we could have been somewhat successful. It would have been a smaller operation, I'm sure of that. I believe the engine failure was not the fault of DAP, but a contractor. And it probably had something to do with the situation that the vessel found itself in those high winds and high seas. Because keep in mind that this was about 15 days after we had departed. So it happened at the island under some unusual conditions. I just want you to take a moment and read this. It means a lot to me. So, many thanks. Appreciate that. Thanks very much. And I'm told, 15 more minutes. You want to see the other end of the spectrum?
Yes.
Sure.
The easy ones? All right, this is not a show that I put together. It was put together by one of the other team members. But here we are, August 15th to 22nd, about a week, the Austral Islands. It took a while to figure out where to go. These are all the options that we looked at, and for one reason or another, couldn't find transportation or couldn't find accommodations. And most of the guys on the team, not me, but others, had been to the same place last year and said, let's just go back there. And here are the guys that were on the team: W5MJ, Madison Jones, former Air Force fighter pilot, RF-101 for the retired military guy here. Yeah, where are you? Yeah. W5RF, a physician, Bill Priakis, a good friend of mine, myself, K5PI, and K5PI's XYL. So what do we take? 248 radio. I'll just let you read this, but the bottom line was they have 3 stations fully equipped with backups. French Polynesia, French possession, there's 181 islands in this 1,200-mile area that is considered French Polynesia. There are 250,000 inhabitants, but 69%, 70% live on Tahiti. There are five groups of islands. 3 of them are DXCC entities because of their separation. And there'd be French Polynesia, call sign FO, Marquesas, FO/M, Australs, FO/A. The other islands are the Gambier, and Tumotos. But they, again, don't qualify for separate country status. Yeah, but there's the 5 groups. Tahiti is known as other name. This area right here, these islands right here, are sometimes called the Society Islands. Raivive is right down here at the bottom. So we all flew into Tahiti, to Papeete, stayed a couple of days, made some contacts from the hotel, and then attempted to fly the 4-hour flight to Papeete. It's official language. We'll just go through this. It's a popular tourist designation. About 40% are USA, North American, Canada. A lot of French there. They usually go through Papeete to go to Bora Bora or Moorea. Bora Bora is a very expensive, high-end place where there's a lot of weddings that are held there. And Moorea is just a 20-minute boat ride from Papeete. Yeah, there was a club bed there, yeah. So it's halfway between California and Australia. It's same time as Hawaii, 3,000 miles from Hawaii, 8-hour flight from Los Angeles. And they're United and another airline are starting service. But the inner island service is by Air Tahiti. So we had one of the guys go a week early to scuba dive. I got there on Saturday, the others were already there. The idea was to fly Monday to Rabi'i, and this is about 400 miles south of Tahiti, and completely different weather. In fact, we were socked in. We landed on the last island that we were to stop on, and they were boarded and took us back to Tahiti. We didn't fly out till Wednesday. So basically, we lost 2 days. Interesting antenna design we used at the hotel. I can talk about it later if you like. This is one of those places where they have beautiful accommodations and weddings on the beach and so on. And these shots are taken from Moorea. Pretty cool, huh? Those are Japanese tourists. In case you couldn't see the cameras. So on the island that was our destination, about 900 people live there. Fairly small, I'll show you a picture in a minute. 1,200 miles south of the equator. Picture of Robert on the right, Trish, his wife, on the left. How about that? Does that look like a South Pacific island? Sometimes called an atoll because of the surrounding reefs and everything. Pretty cool. And the airport, see it right here? And our location was up, I can't quite reach it, but well, what would be the almost northeast side of the island. We had 3 cabanas on the beach. Stations were put in 2 of them, and then Robert and Trish shared the 3rd one. And then across the road was the dining room and some other cabanas. Food was fabulous. Best sashimi I've ever had. I mean, right out of the water. So these are the 2 of the 3 cabins that are on the ocean. That's the 3rd one. Trish, there's a road we had to cross to get to the place where the beer was across the street. And there it is. They also had water and beer, t-shirts. Okay, and this is the rest of the resort then. Now, let's look at some antennas. What we used here were vertical dipoles. Okay? So you know what a dipole is. Usually they're horizontal, they're fed in the middle, and they're hanging between 2 trees. Right? This is the same thing, but it's metal made out of aluminum, and they're positioned vertically. And they are gangbusters if you can get them within a quarter of a wavelength of the sea. And at high tide these were, but at low tide they weren't much further back. That's the 20 meter. So that would be 36 feet tall, right? 32. This is I think this is the 15 meter. That's the 12 meter. And then for 30 and 40, we use the spider pole fiberglass mast. We tape the vertical wire to the mast, use elevated radials tuned. And that's what they look like. That's the 30 meter. That's the 40 meter antenna. And on 80 and 160, 60-foot spider poles. And on 160, of course, we just wrapped the wire up and taped it to the 60-foot pole. And on 160, we went up and then out and made what they call an inverted L configuration. Had 8 radials, 3 of them in the water. That's the 80 meter, that's the 160. Now, is that a great location for a 160 meter antenna? And that's north. So that's JA, that's North America, and that's Europe. All of it over water. And it worked. We made about 500 QSOs in 4.5 nights on 160. And the nearest population center was 6,000 miles away.
All CW or?
Yes. We would have made 10 QSOs if we'd used sideband. We did do some FTA work on 160 also. Now I say that about CW because it really does get through when phone will not. So I'll just let you read this. Those are the bands that were allocated to the 3 stations.
On your vertical dipoles, will the feed line come out perpendicular?
It's supposed to, yes. We tried to do that.
You did?
Because if it doesn't, it does affect the pattern.
Did you have internet of any sorts on the islands?
We did. The store that you saw earlier had really, really slow internet. So we really didn't use it much except to upload the logs.
Sure beats a tent.
And this is the kind of preparation that one should do before you go. We're using propagation analysis to determine, you see across the top you've got the bands 10 through 160, and then you've got the time slots down the left, and basically determine where your target area is per band per time, so that you know, first of all, when to be on the air, because you know, 4 guys can't handle 3 stations for a week, so you got to have some rest time. But if you run 17 meters at 8 p.m., you're probably going to work some JAs, and you're going to work West Coast US, W6, W7, as an example. <clears throat> 73% were CW. We had been on the air 70 hours before somebody remembered to plug in a mic. We gave a new DXCC country to 1,083 people, a new band country to 3,300, and a new mode to 407. Those are statistics from Clublog, based out of England. You see the column labeled unique. A unique is a unique call sign. In other words, let's just look at 822. We made a total of 1,903 QSOs on that date. It was a partial day, but on the 22nd, Zulu time, 1,900 Qs. Of those, 1,245 were individual call signs. No dupes. Some of them, you know, some people worked us on multiple bands. John worked us on 47 bands. Oh, there aren't 47. No, you made a number of Qs, didn't you? Okay, 6 or 8. So that's a big number. It's one of the ways you track your success. The other thing that I should mention is the Allcraft radios. We use the KX3s.
Really?
KX3s. And the pad had been taken out, so we were putting 4 watts output into expert amps, 1.5s. So 4 watts in, 1,000 watts out. We normally ran it at about 700. I want to thank these folks for their help, contributions. And these are extra slides that I don't think you have time to see. In fact, you've seen plenty of slides, I think, by now. So, again, both ends of the spectrum. 3 years of planning, hundreds of thousands of dollars, big team, lots of gear, expensive, 7 weeks on the road, an 8-hour flight from Los Angeles, a 4-hour flight from Papeete to Reveille, 5 guys, 3 radios, 6 or 8 antennas. Let's see. I think I know where my future lies. All right. All right, thank you all very much for your kind attention. This has been fun.